The fire crackled low in the stone hearth, casting soft amber shadows along the cabin walls. Snow whispered steadily against the windows, wrapping the world in silence. Sarah leaned back in her chair, a mug of tea warming her hands as she listened to the wind curl around the wooden eaves. Across the room, Tom carved into a strip of cedar, shaving thin curls that fell to the floor beside his boots. Noah, bundled in a fleece hoodie, hummed quietly over a puzzle on the rug, the family dog Gus curled up beside him. Then a sound. Thump. Not sharp like a knock, nor dull like falling snow. It was solid. Heavy. A deliberate thud against the front door. Gus jerked upright, ears pinned back, a low growl curling from his throat. His body stiffened, not in the way he'd react to a squirrel or deer, but like he sensed something foreign. Dangerous. His gaze fixed on the door and he began to slowly back away, his tail tucked low. Tom stood up fast, setting the carving knife aside. What was that? Sarah was already moving to the window, brushing aside the curtain. But outside, everything was white and still. I didn't see anything, she whispered. Another thump. This one lighter. Almost hesitant. Gus let out a warning bark, then backed further into the corner, whining. Tom grabbed the shotgun from above the mantel. That's not a storm branch. Something's out there. Sarah touched his arm. Wait. Listen. Silence returned, then a faint sound, soft rhythmic breathing. Deep and low just outside the door. Sarah's heart climbed into her throat. She stepped closer, the floor creaking under her weight. And then a low chuff, like a grunt muffled by cold air. Sarah's breath caught. She looked at Tom. That's not a person. Noah stood staring at the door now. Is it an animal? She nodded. Maybe. But it's waiting. Tom slowly moved to the window by the door, careful not to disturb the curtain. He peeked through the side slit. His eyes widened. Sarah, he said, barely audible. You need to see this. She moved beside him, looking through the glass. A bear. Massive. Matted fur soaked with snow and streaked with what looked like dried blood. She stood just feet from the threshold, her breath steaming visibly in the cold. Behind her, almost hidden beneath her belly, a small cub, barely half-grown, whimpered and shifted, its front paw raised uselessly off the ground. But it wasn't the size of the bear that froze Sarah in place. It was her expression. The bear wasn't snarling. She wasn't aggressive. Her black eyes weren't filled with rage but something worse, desperation. She stared directly at the door, unmoving, as though she understood what it meant. As though she had come here, on purpose. She's not attacking, Sarah said quietly. She's waiting. Tom stepped back. Waiting for what? To charge? Maul us? No, Sarah said, already moving to the door. She needs help. Tom grabbed her arm. Are you serious? That thing could kill us in a second. Sarah looked back at him. Look at her. Look at the cub. Noah had crept beside them. His eyes, wide with fear and wonder, locked on the animal outside. She's hurt, he whispered. And her baby's hurt too. Tom shook his head. We can't let a bear onto the porch, let alone near the house. She's already on the porch. Exactly. But Sarah wasn't hearing him. Her instincts as a biologist kicked in. There was intelligence behind that animal's eyes, beyond instinct. Intentionality. She'd studied animal behavior her entire life, but never had she seen something like this. A bear seeking human presence, clearly avoiding aggression, and guarding her cub like a mother would cradle an infant. She turned the deadbolt slowly. Sarah. Tom hissed. I'm just opening it, she said firmly. The door creaked as it opened a crack. Cold air rushed in, sending a shiver through her spine. The bear didn't move. Her eyes flicked to Sarah, then to the cub, then back again. She let out a short huff, not loud, not warning. Almost like she was asking. Sarah opened the door wider. She stepped forward, slow, steady. Her boots sank into the snow as she moved just outside. The cub let out another soft whimper. The mother didn't growl. She didn't lunge. She simply turned her head, toward the woods. And roared. A deep, resonant roar that echoed down the dark trees like a thunderclap. It wasn't aimed at Sarah. It wasn't aimed at the house. It was aimed at something else, hidden. Sarah froze. The bear turned back to her, then stepped aside as if trying to draw Sarah's attention to the forest edge. Behind her, Noah whispered, She's not alone. The woods remained still. Tom's voice trembled from the doorway. What is she warning us about? Sarah didn't answer. Not yet. The bear didn't move again. She stood sentinel on the porch beside her injured cub, her breath pluming like smoke in the cold night air. And far beyond the treeline, deep within the darkness, something else moved. The bear's roar had faded, but its echo lingered in the forest like a warning etched into the cold night air. Silence returned, unnaturally thick and brittle. Sarah didn't move. Neither did the bear. The cub let out another faint cry, and then, as if its last ounce of strength had drained, it collapsed fully onto the porch. Its body shivered, then stilled, save for shallow, rapid breaths. The mother turned to it, chuffed softly, then looked at Sarah again, eyes dark and deliberate. Slowly, stiffly, the bear limped down the porch steps and toward the treeline. Her back leg dragged, and Sarah could see the matted fur streak darker, fresh blood. With every few steps she paused as if checking behind her. "She's leaving," Tom said quietly, still gripping the shotgun. "No," Sarah replied. "She's leading something away." They watched her disappear into the trees, her massive frame swallowed by shadows. But her cub, her fragile, trembling cub, remained behind. Sarah turned and rushed to it. "Noah, stay inside," she called over her shoulder. The boy nodded, eyes wide with both worry and awe. She reached the cub and knelt. It didn't flinch. Its paw was torn open, dried blood crusted around its claws, and one eye was swollen shut. A low moan rose from its throat, weak and involuntary. Sarah pulled the blanket from her shoulders and draped it gently over the tiny body. Tom stood a few feet behind her. "You're not thinking of bringing it in, are you?" "It won't survive the night out here," she said, her voice hard with resolve. "And if something's tracking her, this cub's in even more danger." "She's a bear," Tom snapped. "She might come back and tear the place down if she thinks we're keeping her baby." Sarah locked eyes with him. "She knows what she's doing. She brought the cub to us. She trusted us. We can't just turn it away." Tom opened his mouth to argue, but then he looked at Noah, who had stepped onto the porch silently, clutching a towel and a bowl of water. He placed them beside Sarah and whispered, "Please don't let it die." That ended the discussion. Together, Sarah and Tom carried the cub into the cabin. It was heavier than it looked, but limp, completely surrendering to their arms. Gus barked once, then backed off, clearly unsettled but no longer growling. They laid the cub in front of the fire, on layers of blankets and towels. Sarah moved quickly, retrieving her first aid kit from the cabinet. She cleaned the wound carefully, avoiding the cracked claws, and began stitching what she could. Tom watched, impressed and anxious. "You're sure it's not infected?" "Too early to tell. But it's stable. Paw's bad but not shattered. And it's breathing better now." Noah sat cross-legged nearby, his small hand resting gently near the cub's good paw, close enough to comfort but far enough not to spook it. Outside the wind howled. But it wasn't alone. A chorus of sharp, distant howls broke through the night, high-pitched, echoing. "Wolves." Tom stiffened. "That's close." Sarah grabbed the flashlight and stepped cautiously out onto the porch. The snow had started falling harder. Visibility was low, but just enough to reveal red tracks in the snow, leading from the porch toward the woods. Then movement. At the far edge of the trees she saw it, something dark, hunched, darting between trunks. A wolf. Then another. Low, sleek shapes circling. She heard it then, a faint growl, guttural and wet. Not from the wolves. From the mother bear. Sarah raised the beam of the flashlight. Between her and the trees, the bear stood again. Her side heaved. Blood dripped from a fresh gash across her flank, and her mouth was partially open, panting. But she didn't run. She stood guard. "They're hunting her," Sarah whispered. "And she's too hurt to fight them all off." Tom stepped beside her. "And she still brought her cub to us instead of hiding." Sarah nodded. "Because she knew she wouldn't survive, and didn't want her baby to die with her." The words hung between them like smoke. Back inside, Sarah did what little she could. She boiled more water, crushed dried herbs into poultices, and kept checking the cub's breathing. The fire roared louder now, fighting back the growing chill. Then Sarah did something she hadn't done in years. Something instinctual. She took a plate and filled it with cooked rice, chopped apples, and leftover venison. She poured water into a second bowl and stepped outside. The snow was ankle-deep now. She placed the food carefully at the edge of the porch, in plain sight. Then she stepped back. The bear emerged from the trees. Slowly. Wearily. Blood still trickled from her side, but she limped forward without threat. She climbed the steps cautiously, looked at Sarah, and then, with surprising gentleness, nudged the plate with her snout. She sniffed, ate a few mouthfuls, then backed away, not out of fear but out of respect. Then she looked toward the door. Toward the cub. And let out a soft, mournful sound, a kind of half-growl, half-hum. Not a command. Not a warning. A goodbye. Sarah's breath hitched. Do you think she's leaving? Tom whispered. No, Sarah said, her voice cracking. She's just waiting. That night, the family stayed awake in shifts. The cub rested beside the fire, its breathing steadier. Gus lay curled nearby, unusually quiet. Outside, the forest creaked with wind and snow, but the howls faded. The mother bear remained on the porch, occasionally pacing, sometimes laying her head down on her massive paws, never fully relaxing. Her ears twitched with every sound. At 2:17 a.m., Sarah finally let herself drift off on the couch, bundled under a quilt. Tom dozed in the armchair beside her. Noah was asleep in front of the fire, next to the cub. And then a crash. The window near the kitchen shuddered violently. Gus leapt up, barking wildly. Something thudded hard against the wall. Sarah jerked upright. The mother bear was already standing outside, alert. But as Sarah turned toward the window, her stomach dropped. A shadow moved across the glass. Tall, human-shaped. And it wasn't the bear. The crash came again, a deep thud against the far side of the cabin. Sarah bolted upright, heart hammering. Gus growled low and steady. Tom was already reaching for the rifle he kept stashed behind the door. Another thump, a scrape of claws against wood. And then a growl, not Gus's, a deep, wet snarl just outside. Tom flung the door open, rifle raised. Snow blew in hard, momentarily blinding him. But there, just at the edge of the porch, a massive wolf stood, fur bristling, teeth bared, eyes locked on the open cabin. Tom hesitated, finger on the trigger. Then a roar. Not from inside. From the trees. The mother bear exploded out of the darkness, her wounded body surging forward with terrifying speed. She didn't hesitate. She charged. The wolf barely had time to spin before she slammed into it, sending it tumbling down the snowy slope with a yelp. She didn't chase it, she just stood between the cabin and the woods, breathing hard, blood dripping from her side, and staring into the trees with defiance. Tom lowered the rifle slowly. She saved us, he said in disbelief. Sarah stepped up behind him. No. She saved her cub, and us. The bear turned and looked toward the door, not aggressive, not frightened. Just tired. Then she limped to the porch and lay down, her massive body curled loosely just beside the door. Inside, the cub stirred. Noah, who'd been shaken awake by the noise, crawled to the fire's edge and laid a hand on the creature's back. She knew, he whispered. She knew we'd help. As dawn broke, light spilled across the snow-covered clearing. A quiet calm replaced the chaos, but the air still felt heavy, like a storm had passed, but another was coming. Sarah checked the cub again, inspecting the bandages. But something made her pause. Near the base of its neck, beneath the thick fur, she noticed something odd, a ring of skin slightly raised. A scar. Circular. Too perfect to be natural. She parted the fur further. The impression of something that once dug into its flesh was unmistakable. A collar, she murmured. This cub was kept somewhere. It wasn't born free. Tom looked over. You're sure? Positive. This is an old scar, maybe a year or more. Someone had this cub. Which means, she trailed off. The mother bear wasn't wild. She was once someone's captive. Sarah rose and walked to the table, dragging out her old laptop. Though internet was spotty, she had a database of archived research notes and local reports. She opened a folder she hadn't touched in years, closed sanctuaries and animal trafficking in western regions. Noah watched her wide-eyed. What are you looking for? Confirmation, she said. I remember reading something about a facility nearby. Something wrong. She scrolled through faded documents and flagged reports. And then she found it. A wildlife sanctuary 30 miles north had been shut down 6 years ago for illegal breeding, abuse, and unauthorized trade of exotic and native species. The name jumped out, North Creek Wildlife Rescue. It had claimed to rehabilitate injured bears, but reports later revealed it had been breeding them in captivity to sell cubs into black market shows and roadside attractions. After its closure, 2 adult bears escaped during the seizure operation. They were never recovered. Sarah leaned back from the screen, her face pale. She's one of them. Tom blinked. You think? No, I'm sure. This bear, we thought she was just wild. But she lived in captivity. She was bred in a cage. And when she escaped, she must have been pregnant, or taken the cub from one of the others. Which means the people who ran that place might still be trying to find her. Sarah nodded. Or worse, others who hunt escaped exotics for profit. Poachers. Outside, the mother bear hadn't moved much. She lay curled just feet from the door now, her breathing labored. Her wound still oozed. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed the medical kit and slowly stepped outside. Tom called out, "Are you sure?" But she didn't answer. The bear watched her. No growl. No tension. Just calm, steady eyes. Sarah knelt beside her. "Let me help." She moved slowly, placing the supplies beside her and reaching gently for the injured flank. The bear flinched but didn't move away. Sarah cleaned the gash, applied antiseptic and pressed gauze over it. The entire time the bear simply breathed, deep, slow and trusting. Inside the cabin, Noah pressed his face against the window. Later that afternoon, the bear stood for the first time and limped over to the food Sarah had laid out, this time not just eating but sitting, resting. Her body slumped into the snow, her eyes closing briefly. That night, as the fire crackled and the wind died down, the cabin felt different. Less like a human home in the woods, and more like a shared space, a fragile truce between species. Tom sat near the door, rifle by his side but untouched. "I never thought I'd say this," he muttered, "but I don't think she's leaving." "She won't," Sarah replied. "Not until her cub can." Noah, curled up on the floor beside the small bear, smiled in his sleep. But peace was always temporary. At 9:41 p.m., headlights pierced the distant darkness. Sarah noticed them first, a low humming glow far down the trail. Then the crunch of tires over frozen gravel. Tom stood and looked through the window. "That's not a ranger vehicle," he said grimly. "Too low. Too quiet." 2 trucks rolled slowly into view. Both were old. One had a spotlight mounted to its hood. The other had racks in the back used for hauling. Then they stopped. 3 men stepped out. All of them carried rifles. One of them, tall and wiry, walked toward the trail with practiced steps. He scanned the area like a man who already knew what he'd find. The second man pointed toward the house, then crouched, examining something in the snow. Tracks. Bear tracks. They had been following the trail for days. Inside the cabin, Tom picked up the rifle. Sarah didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the mother bear who had risen now. Not out of fear. Out of readiness. Outside, the spotlight clicked on and swept across the trees, then slowly turned toward the porch. Tom's knuckles whitened around the rifle as he cracked open the cabin door just enough to slip outside. Snow crunched under his boots. The cold hit his skin like knives. But it wasn't the cold that raised the hairs on his neck. It was the silence. The 3 men stood just beyond the clearing, flanked by 2 battered trucks. One man held a spotlight, sweeping it lazily across the trees. Another slung a heavy rifle over his shoulder and pulled out a cigar. The tall one, clearly the leader, had already noticed the bear tracks leading to the porch. He pointed toward the house. "You've seen her, haven't you?" His voice was low and smug. "The big sow, scar on her flank. We've been tracking her for weeks. That one's worth more than you'd believe." Tom stepped forward, rifle in full view. "You're trespassing on private land. Leave now and I'll forget this happened." The man with the cigar laughed. "Or what, Grandpa? You gonna shoot us?" Tom didn't blink. "The authorities already know you're here. Satellite uplink triggered a beacon an hour ago. Rangers are on their way." The leader tilted his head, amused. "That's so." "She's not yours," Tom said flatly. "She was never yours to begin with. She's wounded. She's got a cub. You kill her and it's not just illegal. It's murder." Now all 3 were quiet. The tension crystallized in the frozen air. "Don't pretend you know the law out here," the leader said darkly. "We cleaned up your messes long before you even got involved. That bear escaped government seizure. She's unaccounted for. That makes her open game." Tom didn't flinch. "This isn't a game." From inside the cabin, the faint sound of the cub's cry rang out, an echo of distress that cracked the night. And something changed. A low growl rolled out from the shadows. The men froze. From the darkness behind the cabin, the mother bear stepped into the open, head low, eyes locked on the men. Her fur was matted with blood. Her breath steamed in heavy clouds. Every movement was slow, but deliberate. She placed herself directly between the house and the intruders. "She's," the cigar man began. "Jesus," another whispered. The leader raised his rifle, but his hands were shaking. Then the cub cried again. And the bear roared. The sound ripped through the trees like a thunderclap, primordial and piercing. She reared slightly, towering, her massive frame a silhouette of raw power against the snowlit clearing. And then she charged. Not recklessly. Not blindly. With purpose. The men scrambled. The spotlight crashed to the ground as one tried to run. Another fired, A deafening crack, but the shot went wide, shattering bark from a tree. Tom raised his rifle and fired into the air, a sharp, commanding shot. "Stop," he shouted. "Get down." The bear didn't aim to kill. She bowled into the nearest man, sending him sprawling. Her paw lashed out, tearing his coat and knocking the rifle far into the snow. The second man dropped his weapon and dove behind a truck. The leader backed away, gun still raised but hesitating. And then came the scream of engines. Not the poachers. Rangers. From the trail behind the tree line, 2 snowmobiles roared into view, followed by a third, this one carrying a ranger with a tranquilizer rifle. The leader turned too late. He was tackled, pinned beneath a ranger and disarmed. Another officer restrained the second man who had thrown up his hands. The third, who had tried to run, was cornered by the bear herself. She stood over him, snarling, until a ranger cautiously stepped between them. "Easy, easy girl," the ranger murmured, raising a gloved hand. Another tranquilizer dart hissed into her side. The bear stumbled. "No," Sarah cried, rushing from the cabin. "It's a low dose," the ranger assured her. "Just to calm her down. She's hurt." The bear collapsed beside the porch, her body partially shielding the doorway. Her eyes, even hazy with sedative, remained fixed on the door, on her cub, until they finally closed. Noah ran to her side, tears already streaking his cheeks. He knelt beside her, touching the fur just above her paw. "She didn't want to hurt anyone," he whispered. "She just wanted to keep him safe." The ranger knelt beside him. "That's what mothers do, son." Aftermath. By morning, the poachers were gone, cuffed and carted off by law enforcement. A wildlife rescue team arrived before dawn with snowmobiles and a mobile stretcher. 2 vets worked quickly on the mother bear, cleaning her wounds again and monitoring her breathing. The cub, now stabilized, had taken its first steps outside the cabin. It sniffed the snow and mewed softly as it moved toward its mother, nudging her gently with its nose. "She'll live," the head vet confirmed. "Barely. But she needs rest, proper care, and space." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "You have somewhere safe?" The vet smiled. "A new sanctuary about 50 miles east. Built by conservationists. Ethical, monitored, fully funded. It's not cages. It's open forest." Sarah reached down and gently stroked the cub's head. "They deserve that," she whispered. Noah held back until the last possible moment. Then he stepped forward, tears glistening in his eyes, and knelt beside the bear. Her eyes fluttered open just slightly. She looked at him, really looked, and lifted her paw, brushing it gently against his leg. Noah reached out and placed his small hand against her fur. "I love you," he said softly. And then, without warning, she leaned forward and licked his hand. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft rustle of the trees as a breeze swept through the clearing. Months later. The letter came on a rainy spring morning. Tom brought it inside and handed it to Sarah without a word. She opened the envelope with shaking hands, Noah perched beside her, practically vibrating with anticipation. Inside was a letter, from the lead ranger who had overseen the poacher's arrest. "Thought you'd want to see this," it read. "Both bears made it. She healed faster than we expected. Strong spirit, that one. The cub's a handful, climbing everything, stealing food from the others. But healthy. And free." There was a photo attached. It showed the cub, bigger now, wrestling playfully with another bear in a sprawling green enclosure surrounded by trees. In the distance, just beyond the fence, the mother bear stood, tall, still scarred but proud. "She's watching him," Noah whispered. Sarah reached for a second item in the envelope. A small USB stick. Tom loaded the video on the laptop. It was grainy, clearly from a trail camera. The mother bear stood near a glass observation window. No one else was visible. Just her. She stepped forward. Slowly. Deliberately. Then she raised her paw and pressed it to the glass. And stayed like that. Long enough that the person filming whispered, "It's like she remembers." Sarah covered her mouth, tears streaking her cheeks. Tom blinked hard and looked away. But Noah leaned in, eyes wide, filled with wonder and something else, something only a child still untouched by cynicism could feel. "Oh. She came because she believed in us," he whispered.